Hello, welcome to turn that off. Hello, welcome to Pursuit of Perfect System and another live stream video. Thank you very much for joining us and joining me live if you are, or thanks very much for watching the video at a later date. Really, the intention or the purpose of this video is for it to be a live Q&A type video, so for you to ask me questions and make comments and definitely suggestions, all based around the recent what I called a speaker group mega test. I don't think anybody's taken on 9 different speakers as part of a group test before, and I wanted to make this video probably a week or so ago, but it's been just a hell of a lot going on. So do get involved. Make sure you leave your questions in the comment section. There's been a few coming so far, and what I want to do is, while we wait for other people to join us for this video to try and make it as big a discussion as possible, I thought I'd start the video by talking about what's coming next and what I'm doing now, because as I say, there's been a hell of a lot going on and there still needs to be quite a lot to go on before I'm in a position to be able to bring you any more reviews. So on that note, I'm going to show you a very poor quality photo that I took earlier on with my phone, so I apologize for the poor quality image, but as you can see, there's a hell of a lot going on there in my review system at the moment, and I've had to make quite a few physical changes just to be able to fit the system in. So the first product to bring your attention to are these, which are the Piega Coax 511 speakers, which are a really stunning speaker system, which already really spun my head upside down in terms of what a speaker system can deliver from a certain type of form factor, being an all aluminium form factor, but a very domestic friendly sized one. So I don't want to give too much away about those, but they are a very interesting speaker system, obviously coming back to the main shot. And then you can see 2 amplifiers there. Those are the Canor audio. I keep saying Canor. I need to apologize to Canor audio. So the Canor audio AI 1.20, which by itself or on their own is a pure class A solid state integrated amplifier, but they have a really cool feature which you can link 2 of them together and they run as a master and a slave, which means one of them controls the volume for the other. And when you run them as a master and slave, you run them as monoblock amplifiers, which means they can deliver up to 100 watts of pure class A power in monoblocks mode, or in pure class A mode, but the volume control is all done via just one of them, which means you don't then need an additional preamplifier. So even though as you can see, they take up a lot of space for really 2 integrated amplifiers, but really in a normal situation you would have 2 big monoblock amplifiers, and then you'd need additional space for a preamplifier. So yes, they take up quite a bit of space as a pairing, but they actually take up less space than if you was using a preamplifier as well. So I think that's really interesting. So it's been a while since I've done one of these live stream videos. Please let me know down in the comment section how I'm doing for volume, how that's coming across. Can you hear me okay? I'd really appreciate that. And thank you to everyone who's joining us. Hello to John, hello to Peter, hello to Zodjzon. I don't know how you say that. I think it's Dave actually. And yeah, thanks very much for joining me. But that's not all that's going to be coming soon and what's happening. Today I took delivery of a pretty special pair of speakers, which I'll be reviewing after the Piega, and that is these. These are the Think Team Borg speakers, which cost I think €25,000. So that's a serious high-end speaker system, by far the most expensive speaker that I've reviewed so far, and I haven't taken them out of the box. They weigh 52 kilograms each speaker. That's out of the box. In the box, God knows how much they weighed. So I took delivery of those today, and they're in the pipeline for reviews coming soon as well. So really that's all to try and maximize everything that I've got at the moment, to maximize the dual Canor Audio AI 1.20s. They work really nicely with the Borg speakers, and someone actually asked me to get the Borg speakers in, so I've delivered on that for you. And what I've actually tried to do around all of this is to try and push my review system to be as good as it can be, because it really needs to be to deliver what is needed for these really high-end speaker systems. So I've called on I suppose kind of a friend of mine now, Tungsten Grooves. I reviewed their W70 isolation products recently. They've just designed a couple of new products, really new sizes of Tungsten Grooves hi-fi isolators. So I've got them back in the system, which I'm really happy about because they are special. They are expensive, but they are special in terms of hi-fi isolation. I've got another product in the system which I can't talk to you about yet. I think I'll be talking to you about that later in the month. And that's a really interesting product. Kind of specialist, but really interesting. And it's semi-tied to that really is this, which I've also added to the system recently, which is an English Electric 8 switch, which is from really the cord company, the cables company. English Electric is like a specialist division that they've set up, or a specialist company that they've set up to create hi-fi components, really. And I got to hear this switch at a press event. I think it was at one of the shows last year. Then I went to Nintronics and I filmed a whole event with the cord company there, and listening to what this switch did for its price point, which is about £450. I reviewed a really high-end audio switch last year, the JCAT M12 Gold switch, which at £4,000 was amazing, but it was expensive. And I got to hear about the Melco switch, which is I think about £2,000, so still a good product, but still expensive. So getting a high quality hi-fi network switch for £450 I think is potentially a really good product. I've had a quick listen to what it does. I'm really happy with it. So these are all the reviews that will be coming soon, but at this stage I'm at the run-in period. So I've got to run speakers in, I've got to run cables in, I've got to run all these new products in, and I'm also running these in as well. Hopefully you can see these. These are the Sennheiser HD800S headphones in the anniversary edition in the matte gold color, which it's one of those things, you'll look at this matte gold color in the pictures and you'll think, oh, I don't know if I like it or not, but in the flesh it is really lovely in terms of a color, in terms of a finish for these headphones. And I think it's really quite interesting in a sense. These are an unusual type of headphone. They're different in terms of how they sound to any other headphones that I've listened to before. Very clear, and they're trying to create a really open sound. But I'm literally at this stage just running them in. I've been running them in for about 20 hours or so far. My plan is to put at least 3 times or 4 times that in terms of running time with them. And if I bring back up this picture, you can actually see that I'm using the headphones. This is me running them in, funnily enough. I've been doing that all day. I'm using them with the Chord Electronics Hugo TT stack. So it's the Hugo M scaler with the Hugo TT2 DAC, obviously as a headphone amplifier as well. I'm linking those two products together with the Wave High Fidelity Storm Reference digital cables, which you can just see it there. There's like a little bit of a red kicking up. That's one of the cables, and they've got ferrites all the way along them, which just helps to get out that last little bit of RFI and RFI noise linking between the two Chord products. They're really nice cables. And then you can see on top of the Chord stack and underneath the Chord stack are the Tungsten Grooves isolators, as I mentioned. And you can see the English Electric switch there, and obviously the Kano amps with other Tungsten Grooves isolators on top. So I've been really busy trying to push to get the best sound quality that I've ever had from my review system, because that's probably the best hi-fi system that I've had in there to this date, which is really well, it's saying something. I've had some really amazing products in for a review, but it's sounding very nice from what I've been able to listen to so far. But the purpose of this review, or this video even, is to talk about the recent group test which I did between all of the 9 different bookshelf speakers. And again, please ask questions, please get involved in the video. I'm trying to look through to see what's come in so far. Ask me what do you want to know, what would you like to know about the different speakers that I reviewed, maybe the process. And actually I'm interested in suggestions. What would you like to see in another group test? Because in my head I've got one planned. I'm actually thinking of doing another bookshelf speaker group test, but maybe up to £1,200, which is the rule of doubles. Someone once said to me about the rule of doubles: if you want to see a significant difference in a hi-fi component, well then you need to spend double what it costs. So these were speakers up to £650, so maybe I'd go up to £1,300 or £1,250 or something like that as a group test. So what do you think to that? Let me know, obviously, in the comments section or the chat section of the video as well. And I was thinking maybe if we get time in this video at the end, maybe we'll have a little chat about the Wharfedale Diamond 12.1, which was a real surprise to me. You know, £250 for a pair of speakers that are built fantastically well, really heavy, really nicely finished. And when you think, you know, £249 or £250 or whatever they cost, when you put that into the grander scheme of, you know, the current world, how much things cost, how much, you know, hi-fi things cost, you can spend a hell of a lot more on things across the hi-fi market, and probably wouldn't get something that's quite as, you know, lovely as the Wharfedale Diamond 12.1s are. So let's have a little chat about the speaker group test. Let's pull the speakers back up. So if you find this video first, just to explain what happened. So, you know, I reviewed and really compared 9 different speakers, or bookshelf or stand mount speakers, that cost under £650. And going from left to right, you have the Klipsch RP600M, the Q Acoustics 3030i, the Acoustic Energy AE300, the Focal, I think it's Cora 806, the SVS Prime bookshelf speakers, the Fyne Audio F500, the Bowers & Wilkins 606, not the anniversary wasn't out at the time, so the Mark 1 Bowers & Wilkins 606, and then far right was the Wharfedale Evo 4.2. And I created 2 really group test winners, and there was the reason for that, and I'll discuss that in a second. But I split the speakers into 2 groups. We had the larger group, and I thought the best speaker in the larger group of speakers was the Wharfedale Evo 4.2. And then from the smaller speakers, I thought the best overall speaker was the Acoustic Energy AE300. And I'll talk more about those 2 speakers in systems in a second, and why I gave those that award, really, and that accolade, and why I thought they was the best overall speakers from the group. But what I thought I would speak first about is some of the negative comments that have come through the different videos, why people have asked certain things. I thought I would address some of those now, just to kind of get it out in the open, and then see what you guys think to that. Really sorry, yeah, someone's just mentioned I did miss the Cabasse Antigua MC170. Sorry about that. So I think the first question or negative comment that really has come in has been a question, really, why not? You know, why did I not include some speakers from Dali? Why did I not include some speakers from Kef? Why did I not include speakers from ELAC? And why did I not include speakers from Triangle? And just to explain what actually happened, I had the idea to do a group test, and I contacted as many different hi-fi speaker manufacturers that I could think of, the manufacturers that are new, created, or manufactured or built really nice speakers in that price category, you know, stand mount speakers under £650. And really I hoped that I would get maybe 4 or 5 yeses from different speaker manufacturers who would send me some to do this group test. And within about maybe a week, I had about 10 yeses, which was a little bit overwhelming initially, but I was just really happy that, you know, there was that much interest and that many manufacturers were confident, you know, they was going to send their products in to be compared against each other, which is, I think, testament really to just how good these speakers are in this price category under £650. It really surprised me. It really amazed me, actually, how good they are. So as you can imagine, you know, I sent out lots of emails to lots of different manufacturers, hoping to get 4 or 5. Before I knew it, I had, you know, more work on my hands than I knew what to do with. So I had, originally it was 10, and then came down to 9. So that just meant I didn't actually chase up the other manufacturers who didn't get back to me, purely because, you know, I just had enough, and I felt I had a nice mixture of different speakers there to put together what I think is probably the most comprehensive speaker group test that anybody's ever done, certainly on YouTube. So it wasn't a case of not choosing certain manufacturers for any reasons. I literally contacted everybody, and then the manufacturers that got back to me that said yes are the ones that got included in the group test. So no favoritism, you know, not choosing certain manufacturers. And I think as a result of, you know, some of this work, I've now got some better contacts with the people that organise these bits. So for example, there might be some Triangle, you know, French manufacturer speaker reviews coming in the near future, and definitely they would be included in another speaker group test if I do another one. So again, life is about relationships, knowing people, and then manufacturers coming back and wanting to include their speakers in such a thing as a group test. One of the other negative comments that came in was, why did I use different music for the song or sound demonstration videos? And that was an active choice, so I made the decision. Had it only been maybe 2 or 3 different speakers in the group test, then I probably would have chosen to use all the same music, because listening to the same music 2 or 3 times, I think it's probably just about bearable. But if I'd have used the exact same music across 9 different speaker demonstration videos, sound demonstration videos, I think it would have got pretty tedious pretty quickly. And I know some people have commented that they only watch little bits of the sound clips and that they make judgments from that, but that is not really how I create those sound demonstration videos. It's not really what I'm intending. What I'm intending is that I hope that you watch those sound demonstration videos as informed entertainment. So hopefully you like the music, hopefully you like the sound quality, and then hopefully it makes the video useful entertainment. So you get something out of it in terms of how the system or the speakers or whatever it is that's being reviewed is sounding. For me, how I've got them set up so that when I talk about these products in reviews, there is substance, i.e. there is support, i.e. you get to hear how the speakers or the amplifier, whatever it is sounding, and that then supports what I'm saying in the review. Does it sound bassy? Does it sound bright? Does it sound open? Does it sound clear? Well, you get to hear it a little bit in the sound demonstrations, as close as I can get you. And I do use really high quality recording equipment that cost me a fortune. I invested a lot of money in that equipment because I wanted it to be the best I could possibly get it. And I wasn't necessarily intending to use the 9 different sound demonstration videos to be compared to each other, but as I started to make them, I thought, well, naturally you can compare them to each other. So a few people commented, why didn't you use the same songs? And probably in hindsight, it might have made more sense to at least record one of the same song from all the different speakers, and then I could have created quite easily a sound demonstration video of a comparison. But even doing that, if you think 9 different speakers, so you pay attention to the first one, pay attention to the second one, 9 versions later, are you going to remember one? Are you going to remember 2? So it's very, very difficult to create a sound comparison across 9 different samples. I think that's really difficult. I maybe could have broke it up and done one against the other, but we're talking a hell of a lot of work and more videos doing the same thing. So again, please take all that on board. I'm trying to do the absolute best I can to try and give you as close representation as I can of how these things do sound. But only for me, I can only give you the sound that I get in my room, which naturally would be different to you in your room, because your room acoustics are different, your system might be different, your listening distance is going to be different. So it's the best that I can do to give you the closest sound that I am getting for the review. And again, the intention of the sound demonstration videos is as support for the full reviews. So I can't be lying, because recordings and sound speaks for itself. I can only tell you the truth because you're going to hear it yourself in the sound demonstration video. So again, that was the reasons why. Wasn't to try and pull the wool over anybody's eyes. It was just because I thought, well, 9 different videos, lots of different music might be more interesting and enjoyable to watch, especially when videos are 20 odd minutes long. Something that came up a few times, it was only really one person that asked for it, was why didn't I use the subwoofers? If I'll bring the image back up, you can see obviously there I still have 4 Rel Acoustics 1508 or HT 1508 Predator subwoofers. So it was asked, as I'm using or reviewing bookshelf speakers, why did I not use the subwoofers with them? And I think the right thing to do, and I made a conscious decision about this at the start, is if you're reviewing speakers, and I think the right thing to do is not use subwoofers with the speakers unless you're reviewing subwoofers or you're making a video about subwoofers or the benefits of subwoofers. And I think the benefits of subwoofers are pretty obvious and could be very, very important for stand mount speakers at this price point, especially when we're talking about the smaller versions, like maybe the Acoustic Energy AE300 subwoofers, will definitely help with them, and maybe the SVS Prime bookshelf speakers, and definitely the Fyne Audio F500s, and really all the speakers in this group test would benefit from subwoofers set up well, because big speakers, full range big speakers also benefit from subwoofers that are set up well. But for purposes of a review, these review videos were for the speakers and not for the speakers with subwoofers, so that is why I didn't use any subwoofers with them at all, because I felt that would definitely skew the results and not really give you the truth or really of what the speakers are all about. Something that comes up, and it does come up quite often, is that that fact that I use Dirac Live to review speakers, and I could probably make a whole video about why I use Dirac Live anyway, but why I use Dirac Live as part of the reviews, and then definitely as part of the sound demonstration videos. Well, just something to clarify first is that all of the speakers that were reviewed in the group test and that I've reviewed full stop, I spend a good amount of time listening to them with no Dirac Live, so I get to see and hear how they will sound in my room kind of naturally, if that makes sense. And I do that for two reasons. One, to get a feel for how the speakers are sounding on their own, because that's really important, but obviously in terms of setting them up. So I spend time speaker positioning, speaker angle, speaker towing, and naturally you need to do all of that before you do any room correction or DSP correction and run Dirac Live. So I spend a lot of time doing that because I feel I get to know what the speaker's like before I even do any measurements. And one of the cool things about using Dirac Live is the fact that you do get measurements, and that you do get in-room measurements, and they are based on an average. They're based on an average of 9 different points measured around the room, and that means you see trends or you see characteristics in how a speaker really presents its sound into the room that you might not see, or that you probably wouldn't see for definite if you was only measuring 1 point in the room, because at 1 point the frequency response of a pair of speakers will be wildly different to really an averaged response. So for the example of the Klipsch RP600M, there is a big dip in their frequency response, which I made a whole point about in the review. And the fact that that is seen across an average measured position of 9 different points means that's a real thing. That means that is something that you will hear, and you can hear that. You can definitely hear that in the way those speakers present their mid-range. It's kind of like a character of how those speakers sound. So that was a really important thing to bring up. And people say, does Dirac Live improve the speakers? Well, I don't think so, because it's kind of like the better of two evils. If you look at a manufacturer presented frequency response, i.e. the frequency response that is designed for a pair of speakers, i.e. how it leaves the factory, and then if you measure your frequency response of those speakers in your room, it's nothing like the manufacturer's intended frequency response. It's not even close. So you can argue the fact that by using Dirac Live, you can get the frequency response of the speakers that you hear closer to how the manufacturers intended you to. So to me, that's an obvious plus. So some people will argue that maybe that's improving the sound. I don't think so, because yes, it helps to balance the sound, and you can do some clever things with Dirac Live when you know what you're doing, like I do, but it can't make the speaker sound better than it does. It really can't. It can only help to even and balance the sound out from that speaker more in line with what you should be hearing from it. Yeah, obviously you can goose things and push things around all over the place. That's not really what I do. I just try and find the right balance of sound from a speaker, and I can kind of measure and see how the frequency response kind of measures anyway, and I don't vary wildly from that, especially not for these reviews. But you can hear, and I know certain points in my room and certain limitations of my room, so I definitely want to equalize those out and help to balance the speaker out better in the room. So for me, it's definitely the better of two evils, and that is how I listen. That is how I make an assessment of the speaker's sound, with it off and definitely with it on. And for purposes of the recordings and the sound demonstrations, you get a better recording with it on, because you don't hear my room problems, which would mask a lot of the things that were going on with the speaker as well. And it's me being totally transparent with you, and I think that's one of the things that I'm really proud about in terms of doing reviews, doing speaker reviews and kit reviews, is that I show you my listening room, I show you the kit, I show you how it's set up, I show you kind of what I'm doing, and I give you the closest possible representation of how these things are sounding as I possibly can. So I know some people like these and some people don't. That's absolutely fine, but I'm actually really quite proud of the fact that I do it, and I do it to the quality that I do, again, to try and give you the truth and as close to the truth as I possibly can. And I think the last kind of point that's come out before I hopefully get to some questions from you guys, so now's a good time, get some questions in, is that some people have said that, using the expensive, and it was a very expensive hi-fi system that I did for all those speaker reviews and speaker demonstrations. Well, of course speakers are going to sound good with a good hi-fi system, and customers are probably going to be using the speakers with much more affordable or cheaper or less expensive hi-fi systems. And yeah, that's a very, very interesting and valid point. And it's a tough one to sit here and make a decision on, because I can see it from both sides. And I made the conscious decision to go with not only the best hi-fi system that I had available to me for the group test, but one that I knew really well. So I know the source. The source always stays the same, because that's like my fixed, that's like the constant part of my whole review process, my source. And then I've spent a lot of time over the last year with the Chord Electronics Hugo M Scaler and the TT2 DAC. And I feel like I know those two from a sound quality point of view really well. And then I added the Chord Electronics Etude amplifier, and then I also tried the Arcam SA30 integrated amplifier, and I actually found or felt that using the Chord Electronics full stack with the Etude amplifier was the most neutral sounding from a DAC and amplifier combination at a very, very high quality. And I felt that it was a nice setup to be able to not only push the speakers in the group test to try and kind of maximize what they can deliver, but they're doing it in a very neutral way without imparting really hardly any or probably none of their own character on the music, which means they're not imparting their own character on the kit, are they? Not imparting their own character on the speakers. And if you know a pair of speakers really well and an amplifier adds its own character to it, that's fine, because you know what you're hearing. But when you're listening to new speakers, an ideal review setup is one that is kind of soundless, if that makes sense, or colorless or characterless, because then it's much easier to try and differentiate between speaker A, speaker B and speaker C. And I really found that helped, and it made it very, very easy to hear the differences in the different speakers, so that I was able to bring you the comparative type reviews that I did. And I think on that point I made a conscious decision to not make the reviews too technical. You can go and read all the specs and stuff on the company websites, I think, for the speakers. So instead, I just went for really like pure comparisons. How does A sound compared to B? So yeah, definitely let me know if you felt that worked. Let me know if you'd like to see more technical information in reviews, obviously going forwards, and I'll definitely look to include that next time around. Let me just quickly look through some of the questions that we have here, and then I'm just going to speak to you about a little bit about two of the speakers that I awarded as the kind of best in the group test. So let me just quickly look through to see what questions that might have come in. So it's quite a lot of comments, and people asking me questions on different speakers. Okay, I'll come to that in a second. Well, look, obviously, let me just answer this question here, because this is something that I think I'll see a lot. So Michael Roskar is asked, or basically made the comment that room correction works great for movies and less so for music, or that has been his experience of it. Well, let's just look at that comment just for a second. What is the difference? What is the difference between a movie soundtrack and a music soundtrack? There is no difference. There's absolutely no difference. The only real difference you'll get between a movie soundtrack is the fact that it is more channels. It's multi-channel. And studies done by Dr. Floyd Tall from Harman is that the more speakers that are playing sound to you, the less fussy you are about the information that you're receiving. So I know Harman did a lot of their testing work with just solo speakers in mono, just one speaker, because as you add more speakers, you become less fussy as a listener. But the actual process of room correction for music and for movies is exactly the same. And if it improves movie soundtracks, how can it not improve music soundtracks? The only thing I would say is it probably means it's either not the right solution or it's not being used in the correct way, which means you're not getting the results that you think you shall. Because really all room correction is doing is helping to improve the frequency response, which is essentially what you hear The frequency response is what you are hearing. It's not necessarily sound quality, but it is the information, it is the translation of the source or the music or the movie, whatever it is, coming from the speakers to your ears. So a better frequency response is better sound from a translation point of view. So if it improves movies, it has to improve music the same, as long as it's done correctly, as long as you're using probably the right solution for the job. So moving on. Marcus, how you doing? Yeah, this is a really interesting question. It's actually quite a nice segue. So obviously, you know, I felt very, very highly of the Wharfedale Evo 4.2. And the question from Marcus is, does that make me very curious on how the Elysian 4 would sound? And I've already kind of nudge, hint, wink, with obviously my contacts through Wharfedale. You know, why have I not seen the Elysians yet? Why have you not let me loose on the Elysians? And I've seen a few other YouTubers have had them and have got them, and I feel a little bit left out. Actually, I feel a bit overlooked in the sense that, you know, I've put, you know, a lot of time into Wharfedale products, and to be that's irrelevant. I've really enjoyed the time I've spent with Wharfedales, and obviously I bought the Evo 4.2 speakers because I really like them, and I felt they would be a fantastic benchmark speaker, a bookshelf speaker that's not crazy expensive, that offers a lot. Again, I'll talk about that in a second, to use for comparative purposes for other reviews. And we've got speakers that have just come out, like the Kef LS50 Meta, which are a £1,000 speaker, so £400-ish more than the Wharfedale. But are they a better speaker? Yes, they've got new technology in them, and the LS50 is a world-renowned, absolutely cracking speaker, monitor type of speaker. But does that give you a better overall sound than a big speaker like the Evo 4.2 with its free driver array, which can present a really big and engrossing sound? So again, really nice segue. But yeah, back to the Elysians. Yeah, I'm very, very interested in those. So hopefully I'll get to see some at some point in the near future. So yeah, moving on to talk about the Wharfedale Evo 4.2. And I actually got my hands on two different pairs of them. I got my hands on a black pair, then obviously the walnut finish pair, which I ended up purchasing, or that were the ones that I purchased. I actually really like the look of the white from the photos, but actually in the flesh, the walnut pair is finished really nice. And I would suggest, you know, everyone's got different tastes of what they're looking for from a colour and other perspective. But if you're not sure what colour of Evo 4.2 to buy, the walnut is really, really nice in the flesh. I actually think it's a nicer finish than the black. The black is a bit more subdued, it's a bit more matte in its finish, whereas the walnut one is it's a bit more characterful, and I can't say it's high quality, but I just think it's a nicer finish personally. And what I didn't realise, I actually thought the finish on them was some sort of wrap, maybe a vinyl wrap or something, but I found out the other day that the finish on them is actually a real wood veneer wrap, which is unbelievable for a speaker at £650. I think they cost £600, whatever it is that they cost. So that was another surprise on already what is a really cracking surprise. And what is really, really interesting about those the Wharfedale Evo 4.2, kind of like a first impressions. The other speakers all arrived all in similar types of size of boxes, and then the Evo 4.2 turned up in this whacking great big box that's more like a, you know, a big expensive speaker box, a huge box, because they are a big speaker. And obviously that would be maybe a pro and a con for some people, but in terms of kind of what you get for your money, you pick them up, they are heavy, they feel really, really solid, they feel quality, and they feel special in your hands. They really do feel nice, and that just makes a very, very positive first impression. And that's even before you listen to them, and then you listen to them and they tick, you know, a hell of a lot of boxes for the £600 that they cost. I know in the US that they cost more, but in the UK it's £600. So that's really, really, you know, really, really interesting starting point. And there's different kind of levels of build quality between the speakers in the group test. Some of them are finished slightly higher, some of them feel built more solid than the others, but the Evo 4.2 had a very high finish quality, had a very high build quality, that kind of, you know, old-fashioned sense of this is big, this is heavy, this is good. You know, they have that aspect about them as well, and that's definitely and quite obviously stand out for, I think, probably speakers at any price point. But when speakers start getting expensive, they all start getting big and heavy. But so at this price point, the Evo 4.2 stood out for those reasons. But from a sound quality point of view, I tried to push all of the speakers in the group test as far as I could to try and get the best sound out of them that I possibly could. And looking back, I think I was learning as I was going through the group test. So the first speakers up were the Evo 4.2, so really they was at a bit of a disadvantage, and I reviewed them straight after the Wharfedale Linton speakers, which are speakers that cost a lot more, bigger speakers that cost a lot more. So if anything, the Evo 4.2 probably had the biggest disadvantage, I think, from the group test. And then from there, I moved obviously my way through, and I think it was at the point of hitting the Acoustic Energy AE300s that I aggressively towed those speakers in, because when I started listening to them, it was just all a little bit underwhelming. It was all a little bit too soft for me, and I wanted a bit more bite to the sound. So I aggressively towed in the Acoustic Energy AE300s, and then something just clicked, as it can do. I'm sure we've all experienced that. When you're moving speakers around, when you're trying to tow them in, you're trying to find a point, aren't you, where the sound snaps, everything snaps into focus. And I've had it before, and it's hard when the speakers are big and they're heavy, because you think, oh, I really just want to move that right speaker just a little bit. But if I move it just a little bit, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get it back in the same spot after, if it makes it worse. But when you're playing with smaller stand mounted bookshelf speakers, in a way, you've got the tyranny of choice, because you can tow them in a little bit, and you can tow them out a little bit, and you can move them slightly backwards and forwards a little bit really, really easily. So it makes setup, I think, a lot easier than when you're dealing with, a 50 kilogram floor standing speaker, which is hard to move around. So yeah, back to the setup. So with the Acoustic Energy AE300s, I towed them in really quite aggressively just to see what it was like, and yeah, everything snapped into place with them. And I could tell that when I measured them, because they measured really extended, really linear, and really smooth. And it's like, yeah, what your ears tell you, when that marries up with what you're measuring as well, that's all spot on and great. So after hitting that point, and since then, I've been really favouring actually quite aggressively towed in speakers, and maybe not quite so much in this image there, but they're quite towed in. The Piega speakers are really quite towed in. So again, I'll talk more about that in their review, but that's just kind of what I've been favouring since in terms of an overall presentation. So I don't think any process is perfect. You work for a process the best you can, and I hadn't really spent a lot of time with speakers around this price point until this group test, which is why I was really keen to do it and really happy to do 9 different speakers. Originally, it was going to be 10. The KEF Q350s were supposed to be in the group test as well. So I thought it's a really great opportunity to see just what speakers can do for this price point, and just kind of reset my expectation level and reset where I am with things. Because if you spend a lot of time with very expensive hi-fi components listening to them, you can become quite jaded in terms of value. So I think looking at all these different speakers in this group test, I think the value proposition with them is so high. The sound quality that can be delivered, and I'm really quite proud of the sound demonstration video that I created for the Evo 4.2, because I really pushed them to deliver probably a much bigger bass than they were designed to do, and a really kind of impactful sound from them, but also that stayed clean and sweet for the most part. And yeah, they delivered it, and the fact that they delivered it, and the fact they delivered it so well, again, that was the reason why I called them the best from the bigger speakers in the group test, because I felt like there was probably the kind of least compromise. And to use the word compromise is probably the wrong word, but something has to give. It's very rare to find something that's perfect in hi-fi, so there's always some element of compromise, as I'm sure that designers will attest to, and that they probably felt the least compromise as an overall picture. Would they be the best speaker for everybody? Probably not. It's just how it goes. If you want a more lively, more crisp sound, then the Bauer 606 and the Klipsch RP600M was doing that better. But I quite like an overall smooth, warm, rich, in big bass sound. That's kind of what I kind of like and go for, and I suppose they got me the closest. So just going to quickly look through some other questions here. There's a question here about getting gapless playback over Chromecast. I'm really sorry, I haven't got a huge amount of experience with that, so I can't help you. I'd love to be able to help you with that. So again, another question here about room correction. It plays with treble and balance. Well, so does your room. Your room plays with your balance much more than anything else that you will ever do. Put a pair of speakers in a room, move those speakers around in the room, measure in the frequency response at where you sit, and that it will change wildly, and I mean wildly as well. And a lot of the times the graphs you see are what are called smoothed graphs. So they are supposedly a more reflective representation of what you hear, but they are also a more forgiving truth of what is actually the truth. And one of the most eye-opening and shocking things you'll ever do is start measuring the frequency responses of speakers in your room, because all of a sudden what you thought was sounding fantastic and wonderful, when you look at the frequency response of what you're listening to, breaks your heart. And I've had my heart broken on a number of occasions. So just bear that in mind. So obviously what is the DSP and what is room correction doing? Well, depending on where you put it in the chain, I use it in the source. So if you think the digital music's coming off and the correction's going on there, so maybe some plus here and some minus there in terms of sound, to try and get you a more even frequency response at where you sit. And one of the biggest positives of a good room correction system is your ability to listen to everything. And how often can you listen to 50 different albums, every single song across every single album, and all of them sound even, balanced, correct and good? I remember before using DSP, I would maybe listen to 2 or 3 songs on an album because they sounded good to me and correct, and the other 7 songs all sounded terrible and I didn't want to listen to them. And that wasn't the album, because if you think that album's been created by the same audio engineers, why would 2 songs sound good and 8 songs sound terrible? That wasn't the audio engineers, that was me and my setup and my room problems that was causing that. So for me, DSP, specifically Dirac Live is the one that I think works the best, because it gives you control, gives the user complete control over what you get. For me, that means that I can play and listen to all different styles of music without any issues ever of being problematic. This song sounds better or worse than this one. It's a consistency across everything, and that is why I like it, and that's why I think it works for me. I appreciate everybody's experiences are different, but that's just been mine. It's very difficult as an audiophile, isn't it, to change your perceptions and opinions on things when they are quite forged. And mine have changed drastically over the years, but with that one, that's pretty forged in my mind, that it's always and for everyone, for every situation of benefit. Obviously, room acoustic treatment is different, and room acoustic treatment does other benefits, and I would always suggest room acoustic treatments first. But obviously, being able to control the frequency response of what you hear, I think is massive, personally. I really do. Just going to go back to the questions and see what else has come in. Well, yeah, someone's mentioned about the fact that I mentioned the Evo 4.4 would probably be my preference, I think, between the Evo series of speakers and the Lintons. Now, I really did like the Lintons. I really did. And I didn't quite have the same system with the Lintons that I did with the Evo 4.2. Had I had the exact same system, then I probably could have got better results from the Lintons in terms of space and clarity. And they are a big speaker, and they are a wide speaker that creates a big sound. So I found the sound for them, if you reference my raisin diagram that I put in the Evo 4.2 review video, the sound was big from them. And when a sound is big, there's naturally less space. So when elements of everything are bigger, the space that those elements conform in, I'm talking about soundstage here, is obviously smaller. So the space within the soundstage gets compressed because the elements of the music are bigger. And what's very, very interesting is certain speakers or certain hi-fi systems can create really big elements within a soundstage and also space them out. And I think the bigger the room you're in, naturally that occurs. When you're working in a smaller room, it's very impressive when a hi-fi system is able to separate things out, and yet for them to still be big in size and big in scale. And as I mentioned earlier, I do like a lot of bass from a system. I made a whole video about this, about why you need a lot of bass in terms of how human beings hear, why bass is really, really important. And anybody that's done subwoofer tests on and off, a good setup subwoofer adds bass. The bass then improves the mid-range and amazingly the treble. So, the fact that the subwoofer's generating the bass isn't really any different in terms of importance to your speakers generating the bass. So obviously bass is really important. And at that point, I hadn't really pushed the Evo 4.2 like I have since, because they wasn't mine. I didn't really want to over push them. But when they're my speakers, I can push them as hard as I want. And if something happens, that's my fault. I can live with that. So I thought the Evo 4.4 would suit me better because it's got more bass drivers. It's naturally going to be a bassier speaker. But I haven't really heard the 4.4 other than at a show, so I can't exactly say that. But yeah, I think if I was choosing between the Lintons and the Evo 4.4, I would choose the 4.4 for me personally. But I can see a lot of people really liking the Lintons because they measured really great in my room, and it was very, very easy to get a very good sound out of them, a very, very good sound. And I've seen some other comments that people have said that they want a bit more resolution from them as a speaker system, and maybe a little bit more clarity. So maybe that is something with them. Maybe with them it's something in a case of working on their towing and their placement to try and open them up a little bit. That's not something that I did too much of, and in hindsight I probably would have done actually. So yeah, horses for courses and what you like, but I think either of those speaker systems, the 4.2, Evo 4.2, Evo 4.4 and the Lintons, they're bloody good speakers, really nice speakers for the price point. So just one of the questions about obviously the Bowers and Wilkins obviously being bright. That's a really interesting one, because when I measured the Bowers and Wilkins 606, you can naturally see there is a lift in their treble, and there's no hiding that will make them sound brighter. But what is the definition, I suppose, of bright? And interesting, I used two different amplifiers with the Bowers and Wilkins 606, and it was with them that I decided to stick with the Chord Electronics Etude amplifier, because that kind of quality of amplifier was not producing any negatives to the sound. So what someone might be associating as bright, maybe it's just some sort of element of distortion that we're really, really sensitive at a certain frequency. I didn't really think that the Bowers and Wilkins 606 were bright. Honestly, I didn't really think that in my room, but I can see why people might think that they are, depending on how they're set up and what they're listening to. But the question was actually more about their mid-range as being forward, and trying to think the best way to explain it. Really, when you I think listen to a speaker and then you look at some of the measurements and stuff. So the Bowers and Wilkins, because they are designed in a certain way, and I think the bass that they output, especially from the 606, can make them sound more forward. And when a speaker system sounds more forward, it's more important that you have the right amount of bass to balance it, because sometimes it's not having enough bass which is making the mid-range and the treble appear like it's more forward in the sound stage. And it's just literally perception. If you had that exact same speaker system running with 4 or 6 or 10 big subwoofers producing loads and loads of bass, all of a sudden that mid-range and treble would really recess in terms of your perception of it. So sometimes it's literally just set up with these things as to what the end result comes out like. And again, back to bass being really important, getting the right amount of bass and thinking, right, well, this is a more forward, lively sounding speaker, which is good because they sound crisper and they sound faster and they bring detail out, and that can be really engaging and enjoyable to listen to. But then it's a case of, right, I know that the speaker's like this, it's really important that I concentrate on getting the right amount of bass to balance with that as well. So that would be my advice, obviously, for that. The Acoustics 3030i, is that the best performance speaker for the money? Well, I've only really reviewed two speakers around that price point, which funny enough I was going to segue onto, and that's worked out perfect. So I reviewed recently the Wharfedale Diamond 12.1, and there's been people asking me questions, what does it compare like to previous Wharfedale Diamond speakers? What does it sound like compared to the 11.2? And to be honest, these are the first Wharfedale Diamond speakers that I've heard, so I can't compare them to any of the other legends of history of Diamond speakers, because I haven't heard any of them. And to hold my hands up until recently, I hadn't spent any time listening to any Wharfedale speakers, so it's been kind of a crash course on modern Wharfedale speakers, and that's just coincidence and circumstance rather than preference and choice. So very, very interesting question. Is the Acoustics 3030i the best performance speaker for the money? Really, I can only really compare it to the Wharfedale Diamond 12.1, and I'm not sure if I really explain things that well in the Wharfedale Diamond 12.1 review, because I listened to the Diamond 12.1 and I was amazed at how good they were. I was thinking, this kind of sound, how is this kind of sound coming from a £250 speaker? I was really, really impressed. And then when I put the Acoustics 3030i in for a comparison, it wasn't a massive comparison, but put them in for a comparison, I was expecting, there to be no comparison, for the Diamond 12.1 to be miles better. And that wasn't the case at all. The Acoustics 3030i had some attributes that they was delivering better than the Diamond 12.1. The sound was bigger and more solid. And I like that aspect about a speaker system, and they was doing that bit better. But all of a sudden, the clarity wasn't there. So the clarity of the Diamond 12.1 and the space and the organisation and all the bits that I really liked about the Diamond 12.1 wasn't there. And that could have been the setup, because I put a huge amount of effort into the Diamond 12.1 setup, and you can't put a huge amount of effort into the next speaker setup and still remember how the last speaker was. It's not how it goes. So either way, I think these are two different speaker systems that are going to give you two different types of sound. I think the Acoustic 3030i are probably going to try and give you as big a sound as possible, and I think the Diamond 12.1 are more trying to give you a taste of what really expensive speakers do in terms of organisation, layout, clarity, sound staging. So I like that aspect, and I think I was able to push the sound from the Diamond 12.1s to be more than satisfying in most areas. So I think they're a great speaker for the money. It's about £50 difference or so, maybe £70 difference between the two. So that's a tough one. I think, in terms of picking the best performance for the money, I think that would depend on, do you want a big sound or do you want organisation, space and clarity? So let me go back to the questions. A question here about the Bonichi W5s. I didn't put them in my main listening room because, well, obviously, the original intention was I contacted Bonichi Audio to review them as a desk speaker system, because I obviously reviewed the Wilson Audio speakers, Wilson Audio tune top speakers as a desktop speaker system, and in a way, it seems balmy to have a £15,000 speaker on a desktop, but it's pretty amazing the sound quality that they can deliver, even sat on a desk. So it's kind of a follow-on from that, really, and with how I like sound and with the amount of bass that I like in sound, I didn't think that the Bonichi W5s was necessarily the right speaker for my main listening room. And that doesn't mean it necessarily wasn't, but it just didn't seem the right sort of speaker for that room. And bearing in mind that room is very, very heavily acoustically treated, which means there is room gain, but it's a different type of room gain to maybe a more live type of room. And I think I'm not sure if the Bonichi W5s and the Bonichi speakers are more designed for bigger rooms that are more live in their presentation, but I'd definitely like to review some of their bigger speakers, that's for sure. So no, I didn't put them in my main listening room. That wasn't, for any other reason, that it didn't seem right, and that wasn't what I got them in for in the first place either. So just a question, obviously, about Canal Audio in terms of getting their phono preamp. I'm not a vinyl audiophile. I've actually got some vinyl down there that I bought, actually, because I wanted to try and get into it. There was a whole plan around that, but it hasn't happened. I've got vinyl. I've got a vinyl cleaning machine, and it's all brand new, still sealed. So hopefully at some point I would like to get into some vinyl playback. But for me to actually review turntables and vinyl equipment, I think I would be on a 10-year learning curve to be able to confidently present and actually accurately review vinyl equipment. So I wouldn't want to be a hypocrite and come on here and talk about things that I'm not confident about. So that's the reason why I haven't. So no, I wouldn't do the Canal Audio phono stage or phono preamp or whatever the product is, purely because it's just not my area of expertise, really. But no, great question. And from what I've heard of their products, they all sound really nice. If nice is a category that you're looking for hi-fi components, then that's what Canal Audio do. They do more than nice, but they all sound really, really nice. So obviously just bear that obviously in mind. Someone's asked me to stop saying slave. I don't really know what you mean by that, but if you mean the talking about the stack of Canal Audio amplifiers, well, the reason I've said slave is because that is how they work. They work as a master and slave pair. And when you turn them on and when you adjust the volume, it comes up master on one and slave on the other. So it's not about trying to be, detrimental to anybody. That's just what that process and how they are, designed and what they are called. Looking back through other questions, Someone's asked me about the Den Audio X-Site X18 speakers. I'd love to spend some time with some Den Audio speakers. I haven't really, and that's just not a connection that I currently have. But if anybody sees this from Den Audio and knows anybody over there, get in touch with me. I'll definitely be interested to review Den Audio speakers. 100% would be interested to. It's just, again, it's about getting to know people, and hopefully the bigger the channel gets, the more people watch the videos, etc. More, more contacts and connections will happen. So, no opinion on them at the moment. I apologise, obviously, for that. It's just looking for some other questions. So what is a good value Dirac compatible AV receiver? A tough one, really. I mean, I normally recommend Arcam. That would be, that was been my recommendation for a number, obviously, of years. I've worked and set up Dirac Live on a number of different Arcam AV receivers, and every single time it's been consistently excellent results. Now, obviously, the current range of receivers have gone through a lot of different firmwares. There's been some bugs and some issues, and I've had a lot of the frustrations from people come back to me about that. But I'm sure they'll get it nailed. And we've gone through a very, very, very tough time, obviously, haven't we, with COVID lockdowns, and the Arcam UK test centre where they do all their testing for firmwares has been shut, so they haven't been able to even use their normal testing facilities and system to be able to put the firmwares through their paces. So I think as users of Arcam equipment, we can all be a little bit understanding, but we want them to be perfect, and I'm sure they'll get it nailed. Funny enough, recently an interesting one was Wharfedale. Wharfedale brought out or announced 2 new AV receivers, both of them featuring Dirac. So that could be an interesting one for people there. One of the great things about those AV receivers is that you can allocate the channels within them, which means you can use the 7 built-in channels to power maybe your Atmos speakers, Atmos and surrounds, and then you can use additional higher quality amplification to power your front 3 or your surround 5 or whatever it is you want. And I've always felt that's the one thing that's missing from the Arcam range, and I don't know if that's deliberate or not, but if those AV receivers could do that, then that would just be that one little thing I think that's been missing from them. But in saying that, I've had the Arcam AVR30 with the 4-rail Predator subwoofers, sounding absolutely astonishing, powering quite difficult to drive speakers, KEF reference 3s and the KEF reference 2C center speakers, and then 4 KEF LS50s. Mind-blowingly good sound. So AV receivers are obviously getting better, and they are very, very, very capable when you set them up well. So I don't know what affordable would be, what you're kind of referring to there, but maybe consider Arcam, maybe consider Wharfedale, or maybe consider Emotiva, but I don't know if they make AV receivers. I think it's only Premium Power from them. Okay, back to the questions. Someone asked me my thoughts on a good record player. Sorry, I can't help you with that one. Do I have any different opinions on the difference between silver and copper speaker cables? That could open a huge can of worms. My advice, try both. Go with the ones that you like. Silver doesn't necessarily mean bright. Definitely doesn't mean bright at all, in fact. And I think copper doesn't necessarily mean warm. So my advice is try them. Listen to different ones. Spend some serious time. Listen to different ones. Go with the ones you think sound best. That's my advice, definitely, for that. What do I think about magazine reviews? They'll say different things. Well, that's a really interesting one, and sometimes people speak to me and they say they don't agree with my opinions in reviews, and I think that's absolutely fine, and I think that all boils down to the fact that no situation is perfect. So every different reviewer is going to have a different room, and they're going to have different ears, different expectations, and different past and previous experiences, and really that reviewer can only really give you the best of their opinions and the best of their experiences. And I think it's good in a sense that you see differing reviews or different opinions from different reviewers and magazines and websites and YouTube videos, because then if there is consensus, if everybody says something's really good or mind-blowingly good or game-changing, as whatever is the words that people use, then you can pretty much guess that it's going to be a good product to put on your shortlist and and go and listen to and get a demo of. So quickly looking at other questions. What kind of amp pair would you suggest for the Evo range? Very, very interesting one. More recently, because I spent a lot of time with the Chord Electronics Etude amplifier, which is, as I mentioned, like a characterless fast amplifier with good bass control. That's a very nice sound, I think, for most speakers, for most, but that's expensive. So it will just depend. I haven't reviewed that many different, more affordable amplifiers to be able to say, I suggest this one and this one. Obviously, someone's mentioned Audio Lab there. Audio Lab could be a good solution. I know somebody who tried that recently didn't think it was quite meaty enough sounding for them, so maybe that's something to bear in mind. But unfortunately, it is a case sometimes of just trying these things out for yourself and seeing what works. It's very difficult to just sit here and have played with everything and be able to recommend, from everything. There's so many different products at so many different price points that I want to hear them all. I want to play with them all, but there's only so much time. So I work 7 days a week as it is, but there's only so many days in that 7. It's only so many weeks of a year. Looking back at the other questions. Do I think I'll get a Lampsiator DAC in from John? I'd love to. I'd absolutely love to. I haven't got any contacts with them yet. No connections there. But yeah, I'd love to. Tube DAC. I've had very, very limited experience with tube-based or valve products, but I've really liked what I've heard. Really, really liked it, and that's definitely an area, a whole other side of the industry that I'd love to spend some time with, and review and bring videos and create content about it for you. So yeah, I'd love to, but it's not something that's happening immediately because there just isn't the connection there as it stands. Again, someone's asked about the Wharfedale Evos with name amps. I don't know, definitely possibly. Just depends. Again, Name is another brand that I haven't spent hardly any time with their equipment. Again, I'd really like to. It just hasn't happened as of yet. Someone's asked me about the Bowers & Wilkins 606 S2, like the anniversary edition, and I got invited to like a press event, which was an online, obviously a virtual one, before the release of the speakers, and it seemed like they'd made just a few tweaks to the crossover there, which maybe would just give them more refinement to how they sound. I really liked the Bowers & Wilkins 606. I was able to get what I class as an impeccable sound from them. Not a perfect sound, but one that's difficult to fault. And maybe if there was something missing, maybe it could be a little bit of smoothness and some refinement and some richness, maybe. And is that possible to get that from a speaker crossover improvement? I don't know. Not a speaker designer, possibly. So yeah, I'd be interested to hear them for sure. So if you've compared the original 606 to the anniversary, let us know. Let us know your thoughts, obviously down below in the chat section or the comments section, obviously, of the video. Again, another question for the Evo 4.2 speakers, asking about a Marantz 6006 integrated. I really haven't listened to much Marantz equipment for a number of years. A little bit of their AV products, which isn't really the same. I had a very, very impressive Marantz demonstration with the late Ken Ishiwata. What was that? I think that was at the Festival of Sound HiFi show in London. Must have been 2 or 3, maybe. Yeah, probably 3 years ago. I created a video for it. He did an excellent presentation with Acoustics Concept 500 speakers with the legendary Ken Ishiwata towing, literally where the speakers are literally facing kind of diagonally opposite, so aggressively towed in. And that was with their Marantz Pearl. I think it was the Pearl range of electronics, kind of with the gold finish. And I've got to say that was a very, very impressive demonstration. Obviously with carefully selected music to create, an overall presentation of sound, but it was sounding bloody impressive. So yeah, I mean that's been about my only recent experience with Marantz Electronics. It's another brand I'd love to do some work with, or listen to their products, and hopefully that will happen. But I'm sorry, I can't help you with that specific question about that product. And then there's another one there about other German types of speakers like Canton Audio, Tofal, Fishhead Audio. I don't know that one. Again, all companies I'd like to work with. I'm sure the relationships will come at some stage. So if you know anybody there, maybe recommend that they speak to me, because sometimes conversations help if they go both ways. Have I missed anything? There was a question right at the start that John Dabba asked about kind of SPL levels for the the Wharfedale Evo 4.2 speakers, you know, kind of what SPL levels do they play at? And that's a really hard one. I measured not long ago what kind of volume level I listen at, and I was listening, again, I don't know how accurate it is using an SPL meter, but I was listening between 90 and 100 decibels, and that really surprised me because I was expecting it to be between maybe 70 and 80, but that wasn't crazy loud either, not for me anyway. So, you know, 90 to 100 decibels, yeah, isn't that hard probably to hit, really realistically, especially in an acoustically treated room. And I don't know if anybody has or hasn't listened in a very heavily acoustically treated room. What happens is rooms have what are called an RT60 time, which is a rate of time that sound takes to drop by 60 decibels, which is supposedly an audible limit in terms of what you are and aren't hearing. So the more you acoustically treat the room, generally the lower that RT60 time becomes, which means sounds start and stop much faster. They don't stay in the room for longer. And the RT60 time in my listening room is very low, which is why the sound recording demos come out as good as they do, which is why the A/B demonstration videos that I do are easier for me to record, and I think easier for me to hear, and hopefully easier for you to hear, because again, there's no sound lingering in the room. The sound is there and gone really, really fast. And I think that just means when you turn the volume up of a system, again, the sound's there and gone. And, you know, probably means I can listen at louder volumes from the speakers because of the room absorbing the sound as opposed to it kind of echoing in the room more. Whether that's of interest to anybody, not sure. Am I listening to Bon Jovi? Actually, these are purely for show. I actually unplugged the headphones because I could hear myself echoing through, so I turned those off. So, you know, there's a lot of other questions. You know, I can't really ask everything. I feel like this has probably gone on. I don't know how long this has gone on for, but it feels like it's gone on for quite a long time. So I hope you've enjoyed this live stream. You know, I semi-planned this. It was a little bit off the cuff as well, and I want to get back into doing more live stream videos with special guests. So really, this was just a warm up to try and get back to using the software and actually understanding how to use the software and create a live stream video. I've got some special guests lined up that I want to invite on. So I hope this has been an enjoyable video for you. It feels like I've just waffled and ranted because I'm on my own. I've got nobody to talk to. I feel like I've just waffled and ranted on for like 45 minutes or wherever it is. So I hope it's been enjoyable. I hope it's been kind of useful in a way. I hope you're enjoying the videos, and I just want to say I can't thank you enough. Everybody that's come on this live stream, everybody that watches all the videos, all the thumbs up and stuff, not the people that thumbs down. I don't thank you, but it seems like there's 4 or 5 of you that do every video. But everybody else, thank you so much for watching all the videos. Thank you for the constant support, messages, kind messages, appreciation and gratitude. It really does mean a lot to me. Hopefully, it's helping the channel grow and find a bigger audience, and the bigger the channel gets, the more companies that are obviously naturally going to want to obviously work with me, and and we can grow and develop things from there. So, but feel free to 3 thumbs down. Feel free to thanks Lee, by the way. Feel free to leave comments. Let me know what you'd like to see going forwards. I briefly mentioned it at the start. I have got in my mind to do another bookshelf speaker group mega test, maybe up to about £1,200 or £1,300. It's not imminent because I've got a lot of reviews lined up and really nice kit to review, and some other bits that I haven't mentioned. So maybe December, maybe January, something like that. And the logistics of doing a group test with bookshelf speakers is much easier than trying to store 10 different large floor standers. But I'd like to do floor standers as well, so we'll see. So any ideas? If you can think of a really interesting stand mount speaker that costs up to about £1,200, £1,300 that maybe is not obvious, let me know in the comment section, or send me an email or a direct message on one of the social media channels, and I'll make a note of that, and I'll make sure I contact those manufacturers obviously for it. And I think on that note, if you haven't liked or followed me on Facebook, please do. I have got an Instagram page which I'm trying to do some work on as well, but so please, if you're on Instagram, it's Terry Pursuit of Perfect System on there because I messed up the account. So yeah, please follow me on Instagram as well. Obviously there's a Patreon, Pursuit of Perfect System Patreon as well, if you'd like to kind of support the channel, donate to the channel. I'm trying to do, and I want to do more for my Patreons, or patrons, whatever they're called. So I'm hoping to do more for them. But I just want to make sure I constantly bring you the highest quality video content that I can. And I'm really proud of where the content's got to from a quality point of view, but I still want to make it better. So hopefully give things will keep getting better for you going forward. So again, thanks very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thumbs up all the way. Subscribe to the channel and all that jazz. And yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you soon. Take care, everybody. Thanks. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye.